Hello and welcome to another episode of the Fully Charged Show podcast. I'm currently in Australia. I'm not that far. I'm in Sydney and I'm not that far from a town called Wollongong. And in this town, a coastal town in New South Wales, lives an extraordinary man, Saul Griffith, who I'm speaking to on this episode of the show. And it really is, it was a great honour as well as a pleasure. He is an extraordinary voice for sanity in the energy transition, and his knowledge and understanding. It will be very apparent that I just about managed to keep up with him. And my goodness, I was struggling. He is an incredible force of nature and a really fascinating man with an incredibly deep knowledge of this. So it's very hard to define him. I mean, he's a writer, best-selling writer. He's got a new book coming out very soon called Plug In, which I'm going to plug. It's not out yet, but it's coming soon. He's written numerous books before. He's a speaker. If you Google him, you'll find an enormous amount of stuff about Saul. He was at the first Fully Charged live, as it was, in Sydney a couple of years ago, and I didn't meet him then. He was on a panel that I wasn't chairing, and I was really disappointed not to meet him. But he made up for it, more than made up for it today. Really a wonderful chance to talk to him. There's basically I can't do an introduction big enough. He's an American-Australian scientist, inventor, writer, and an enormous advocate for electrifying the world and the enormous, obvious benefits of doing that. So that's it. I just want to mention that we are about to hold our wonderful Everything Electric Live in Sydney on the 7th, 8th and 9th of March at what I call the Olympic Park, but I believe it's got a proper name, the Exhibition Centre. It's something like that. Anyone who lives in Sydney is going to know what that is. Anyone who lives in New South Wales is going to know. But I mean, it is going to be an exceptionally big show this year. There's an amazing amount of test drives available of electric vehicles and electric transport in general. Lots of bikes and scooters and all kinds of other business. Big electric trucks, massive electric trucks, swapping batteries. It's going to be demonstrations of that. And amazing speakers. That's enough from me. Please do welcome onto the Fully Charged Show podcast the truly, truly remarkable Saul Griffith. Love the Everything Electric Show? Then join us live in Sydney in March, or London in April, or in Vancouver, Farnborough and Melbourne in September, October and November 2025. Saul, thank you so much for finding the time. Oh look, I've got a shark. But also, I think I want the listeners to know you've actually carved out a bit of time on your birthday. This just feels really wrong. It's really kind of you. I know which schedules are difficult. And all that stuff.
It's my 51st birthday. I should be doing 51st birthday things, which for me, there's a spectacular nor'easter is blowing in, and I had plans to head off from Coaldale Beach and sail down to Wollongong kite surfing.
Oh, what? Oh my God. You're welcome to do. I'm terrified. I can watch from the beach.
There's a 2-meter swell and it's blowing 25 knots. So you're in between. You're in a very dangerous position for a podcast. You're between me and pure joy.
That's a challenge. Let's keep it. I tell you what, let's stay on topic, keep it brief, and you can get out there. I don't want to hold you back from it. I feel really bad. We've got a good starter question for you. Can we electrify everything?
Of course we can electrify everything, and I'm not quite sure what the origin of that question is.
Well, I think there's a lot of people who say you can't electrify everything. I think you can, but there's plenty of naysayers in the world.
Right. Well, we already use electrolyzers to make ammonia. We can electrify steel making. I've known multiple groups doing electrochemical pathways to steel. Even if you have to use hydrogen, the hydrogen starts with electricity. We can electrify all the vehicles. Even the big trucks are going electric.
Yeah.
Electrifying long-haul aviation may never happen.
Yeah.
That needs a battery that's 5 to 10 times higher energy density than what we have. it's hard to electrify pigs and cows, and we like eating pigs and cows. But, quite seriously, there are synthetic biology pathways now where you can turn electricity into proteins.
Right.
And so, it's not inconceivable that we electrified a hell of a lot of food. Electrifying a combine harvester might be hard, but we just might have many small combine harvesters instead of one
huge one. Yeah.
Huge one, like, swarms of drones that are often do a job better than one big machine. So I think if you take a tiny bit of creativity, you can electrify everything. Really, I think the more interesting interpretation of your question is, can we culturally electrify everything?
I guess that's what I meant. Yes, that's more accurate.
In which case, Instagram thinks I'm a car guy, which I find hilarious.
Right.
And I am a car guy. I really like, mid-century European small cars, and I own a collection of really absurd vehicles. But because of that, it thinks I'm interested in 2,000 horsepower hill climbing drag cars that destroy ecosystems in a flurry of diesel exhaust. And when I think about the culture as represented by the people who are desperately clinging to their manhood with these things, I think we got a long way to go before we can electrify that.
Yeah.
However, I do like to say, we'd be doing a better job if we were selling the climate movement as we're going to solve climate change with electric jet skis, right? And doing electric donuts. So, I'm hoping my son gets his driver's license in a month. We bought a 1966 EJ Holden, so we're electrifying that for him, and that's glorious.
Oh, wow.
I just been building electric go-karts that can do 0 to 60 in a couple of seconds, and they're hilarious.
Terrifying.
So, I don't know. I don't see any reason why we can't electrify everything.
Yeah.
I think they're cultural and psychological barriers, not technical barriers at this point.
I mean, I'm very interested in this because I was talking to Mike Casey, the cherry farmer in New Zealand. I think you may have heard of him.
Best cherries you've ever eaten, mate.
Oh, they're amazing cherries. We were there a couple of weeks ago. Just beautiful. We had such a great time. But he was explaining about the rewiring idea because for some reason I've not been aware of that in the UK. And I'm very aware of it now in New Zealand. And so you're very involved in Rewiring Australia. But can you kind of explain what that is for an outsider?
Really, we're trying to kick up rewiring the world. We now have I started all of this work where I stopped being a developer of the technology, although you can see behind me I still tinker and do it a little bit. But got into policy in 2019 when there just was obviously most strategies for climate action had failed. Yeah. So I wrote the book Electrify. That's really an argument that, yes, you can electrify everything. If you do, the economy's more than twice as efficient. The cost of energy will go down, not up. Yeah. And we can solve it. And here's a very concrete plan to electrify all the things. That led to starting Rewiring America. That ended up being a very policy-oriented organization initially, working on the Inflation Reduction Act. Now we're a deployment-focused organization, taking some of the funds from the Inflation Reduction Act and connecting it to people. And then Rewiring Australia, Rewiring New Zealand realized similarly, we need an advocacy group for this electrification of everything movement that needs to be engaged in policy, needs to be engaged in the regulatory fight, because the fossil fuels, not necessarily in an evil way, but they've captured the existing set of regulatory and policy things for an energy system.
Yeah.
And so if you want to build a new energy system that doesn't create carbon dioxide on things, you'd need to be in the policy and the regulatory game. And that's a dirty, dirty knife fight with really nasty people.
Yeah.
And so that's what Rewiring Australia, Rewiring America, Rewiring Aotearoa or New Zealand are all about. We actually also now have a chapter in Rewiring Taiwan. Right. And also it's, really is about showing with data that this is possible. There's still, most countries don't believe it's possible because, quite frankly, the International Energy Agency still doesn't do the modeling right. We still talk about energy systems in the language and then in the sectors that were defined in the 1970s. The whole world, there's abstract notions of we can do it and we can hit 1.5 and 2 degrees, but you've got to translate that into realizable policy and regulatory reform and technological rollout, and that's not happening, and we're losing handsomely to the fossil fuel industry in that fight.
I mean, I can't help that bringing up the current administration in the United States. I mean, I'm just wondering what your opinion is on the scale of the pushback.
About them for at least 15 minutes, mate.
I know. I gave you a break. It was your birthday. I didn't want to bring it up. We don't have to talk about it. I'm very happy to avoid it. But I mean, it's kind of a fair. Well, you just mentioned the Inflation Reduction Act, which I presume is, not such a big thing anymore. But I mean, my take on it has been, it's a global phenomenon, not an American one. It's bigger than any one individual leader or country. What is happening around the world is on such a huge scale now that it's, I am very concerned about it, but I'm not terminally depressed.
As with most things, thinking about America has scrambled your brain. So you put 3 or 4 questions into that mumble there. So let me use that as a way to say what I would like to say about it.
Yes.
It is too early to know what they are up to. Elon Musk is one of the original electrifiers. Tesla is one of the most important companies globally in the electrification of everything. He runs a thing called the Department of Government Efficiency. Efficiency has always been the concern, and the bipartisan approach to solving energy problems is to make things more efficient, and the most efficient energy system is the Electrify Everything one.
Yeah.
So you can hope maybe that after he's got some revenge over whatever perceived slights, that we can go back to electrifying everything, and Elon might even be on side.
Right.
You would say that the problem in the US for electrification is that it's too expensive for regulatory reasons. So the climate movement has, it's good. We did a great job. We made everyone aware that the climate action is electrification. That's super. But then we didn't in the US. In Australia, it's easy because solar electricity is cheap and you run your BYD, which you can buy because there's no tariffs on the BYD here, and the electric car's cheap, and it's driving for 2 cents a kilometre instead of 25 cents in a petrol car. So no conflict between my pocketbook and doing the right thing, so I'll sign up. In the US, rooftop solar is about 5 to 8 times more expensive than it is Australia.
Wow.
The grid is more expensive. They've put tariffs on the cheap Chinese cars, so you can't get the cheap electric cars. The electrification message has been good, but it comes with you have to be rich to do it, because there hasn't been enough people in the climate movement focused on lowering the cost of electricity. So the cost of nuclear power in the US is 6 times higher than it is in South Korea.
Right.
So what's the answer? Let's take the dereg. It could be, and I'm actually going to DC and I'm going to have some conversations with people who lean on the Trumpy Musk side of the thing about, actually you could deliver the president's mandate, which is lowering the cost of energy by 40% by electrifying everything, making nuclear cheap, which is a fix the regs and fix the policy, make rooftop solar cheap, fix the regs, fix the policy. And then once you have that cheap electricity and you make the things in America, there's a really good economic revival, efficient economy story that that does not seem any more Democrat to me than it does Republican, because Republicans have traditionally driven the efficiency agenda in the US. Yeah. So honestly, what's going on just looks like chaos, but it doesn't have to be, and you have to say, this is a good thing, it's going to happen. So the question to me is, will that be what happens after the shock and awe of the first 100 days? Or is the rest of the world going to have to figure out a containment strategy for America?
Yeah. Yes. That's a much better answer than my question. Well, my question wasn't even a question. It was just, I just sort of tripped over some words, as you rightly pointed out. But okay, so
it was a question salad.
It was a question. Thank you. I am really good at making a high-quality question salad. It's my skill. What about? The one I'll try and make it a thin question sandwich. The technological dominance and industrial dominance of China. The manufacturing dominance? How? I mean, because I find that really fascinating. That shift has happened for me, for my consciousness, really in the last 10 to 15 years. You know, that the focus going over there.
Well, this is the very long and very dark shadow of Jack Welch and Bill Clinton.
Right. Ah, okay.
Right? Like, there's so much blame that can go on here, and the time to solve this problem was 30 years ago.
Yes.
40 years ago. And you think about it, so the globalization agenda, so everyone thought that's a Republican agenda, it was really Clinton who was neoliberal light and let's go all globalist.
Yeah.
And that worked with the narrative of Jack Welch that we're going to send the American economy into the service economy. We don't need to do any of these dull manufacturing things anymore. And GE will be more efficient. All right. We now know how that works out. GE is a fraction of its former self, and America literally doesn't know how to make anything anymore. I'm trying to make this product. I'm making it in Taiwan because I literally can't get a supply chain for a relatively simple electric vehicle product in the US that's functional.
Yeah. Wow.
So in 2007 and 8, I was working a little bit adjacent to the Obama administration with the Department of Energy, and it was all about hydrogen and gas transition. And America bought the story of the Pickens plan, was what it was called at the time, which was a gas developer in Texas, Pickens, and he's like, "Oh, gas is a transition fuel," which was one of the very many great distractions that has sent everyone off on the wrong path.
Yeah.
It set the whole American economy off on the wrong path. And then in 2013, Germany did Industry 4.0, the idea that you'll digitize industry, CNC machines, robots making everything, and that's a good idea. And then China says, oh, that is a good idea. That's such a good idea. Let's do that. And so in 2014, they say, let's do Made in China 2025 policy and a commitment to make not just the new energy technologies, but the automation, industrial automation and the robots to do it without labor so it's cheap.
Yeah.
And they've done a very good job of that, and that brings you to BYD. I don't really believe the American stories of the enormous subsidies of the Chinese government. I think the Chinese government is not subsidizing those industries to any greater degree than the American government is subsidizing the oil and gas industry. So let's just call that a square and say the problem was China does not have enough domestic oil or gas to run its economy. It doesn't really want to buy it from Russia or Saudi Arabia or America. They're all bad options if you're China. Yeah. So it said, we'll go all electric. America thought they could still make gas and oil cheap. They can't do either. They're uncompetitive in oil compared to the Middle East. And honestly, gas is only economic if the interest rate is low.
Yeah.
And so Helen Thompson wrote a great book about this. I can't remember. It was like oil and the American energy contradiction or something. But the boom-bust cycle of the gas industry is driven by interest rates and investment, but it's not as competitive as the other producers. So the problem is America bet on exactly the wrong thing at the wrong moment. China bet on the right thing 15 years before everyone else. And so now China has this huge advantage, and America has undermined its education system. I think China is doing 10 or 12 times as many engineers per year as you need. I can't hire a decent power electronics engineer in America. There's 6. And we need 6,000. And they're all old, right? So anyone listening who wants to know how to save the world, become a power electronics nerd.
Yes. If you want a good job. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. It's everywhere you look. There's power electronics problems. And so, I think the challenge for America is it's very psychologically hard to either admit that it was wrong or to admit that China is an equal.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I think both of those things are true.
Yeah.
Now, that's not to say I like anything about the management of China's political system, but right now, and actually for the last few decades, I haven't particularly liked anything about the management of America's political system either.
No.
Let's also call that square and say, I'm a single issue voter and all I care about is zero emissions.
Yeah.
And it looks like they've made difficult decisions, and it's playing into very painful, very difficult politics in the US.
Yeah.
But you can't bet against the US. I still believe that is true. And it's not even until you get more information, it's not even clear that some good won't happen under this administration, even if by. So I'm a little bit tired of the defensive crouch and let's just say no and stop everything. Posturing of my Democratic friends. I'm sick of the bragging of my Republican friends. I'm like, we all just get along and do the work?
Yeah. But I mean, I think you make a point there, which I think is very true. So the reason I became aware of the notion of electric vehicles was in California in 2001, 2, 3. I was working there at that time. And I kept meeting engineers that were developing battery management systems and electric drivetrains, and it didn't mean anything to me. It wasn't. I was going,
Ian
why would they do it?
Ian Wright, he took you for a drive in his what was his fabulous little car? It was a roll cage with 1,000 horsepower.
Peter Wright? Was it Peter Wright? What's his name?
Ian Wright.
That's it. Yeah. Yes. Ran incredibly fast, but that was. I thought that was interesting, and because I know you were there for a long time. That in a sense, the technology we're now very used to was developed in Silicon Valley. It was not developed in Detroit. It was not. It did not come out of General Motors or Ford, as ex-President Biden said. They did not.
I think you've just done a terrible disservice with revisionist history.
Oh, okay.
So GM was working hard on this.
Yes.
Asia was working very hard making batteries for all of America's laptops.
Right.
It was a smart engineer from Stanford who actually realized you could make a workable battery out of the lithium batteries in laptops.
Right.
That was J.B. Straubel. That was really what made Tesla work out, despite who everyone wants to give credit to is the wrong story. But all of those batteries were really developed in Asia, and all of that technology is an Asian success story. And we have thanks Samsung and Panasonic and everyone else to thank.
Yeah.
There was some integration and then some sexy marketing that happened in Silicon Valley. That's what Silicon Valley actually does. Silicon Valley is not very good at developing new or hard technology. It just takes the credit when everyone else does it.
Right. Thank you for correcting that.
Also true of AI, true of autonomous cars.
That's a much better grasp of that story, of that history, yes. But I mean, I still can't help thinking that, do you think like the EV1 and General Motors' early dabbling with electric vehicles was an actual positive step towards what we are seeing now?
Yes.
Right. Okay. That's good.
Like it's a small picnic blanket that you can put all the engineers on, and they went from there, and some of them went to work at Tesla, and some of them worked at AC Propulsion, and some of them worked for Wrightspeed, and it's in the soup of the real complicated story of any complicated technology's development.
Yeah,
is it's lots and lots of players, and then someone gets to declare victory because they happen to raise money at the right time.
Yeah.
Right. So some cultural things needed to happen. Some scale and technology things needed to happen. Tesla should get credit for doing all of those things well. But I think to write out GM as part of the story, to write out Asian battery scale manufacturing as a big part of the story, is to miss the reality of how these things develop globally in the modern age.
Right. That's very good. I'm very happy to hear that, and that helps me a lot. That's But that's that aside, the challenge. The one area that we're very familiar with is the European car market, the European manufacturers, the struggles they're going through. In particular, Germany, France. I have the feeling
when Asia was thinking, let's do batteries, Germany was like, how do we lie about diesel? So they made a similar mistake in the US, right?
Yeah. How much trouble do you think the likes of BMW, VW, Audi, Mercedes are in terms of the competition from China?
So I just wrote a new book. It's going to be called Plug In.
Oh, good.
If Electrify was for policymakers and the big switch was for what you might call thought leaders or early adopters, Plug In's for the everyday person and the tradie.
Right.
And I looked in detail at the economics, the day-to-day economics of doing all the electrified things, whether it's your car or your stove or your water heater or the solar or the battery, and how it works in the context of the real everyday economic decisions of a real person. And you look at a car and it's unbelievable. Like what I said, it's like 2 cents or 1 or 2 cents a kilometre to drive a electric vehicle on your rooftop solar, and it's 25 cents to drive it on petrol. But really, the depreciation of the car dominates the cost of ownership of that car. And yes, you could save $3,000 or $4,000 a year on each car in the driveway on petrol. But if you've decided to buy a BMW for $90,000 instead of a BYD for $40,000, you've made a completely uneconomic, irrational decision based on like some photograph of someone you saw in automotive history 20 years ago that's made you want to have the 3 BMW stripes and wear the hat. Right. So the problem with, what might save Germany is just the legacy history of good storytelling. But there's not a car that's EV that Europe is making yet that really competes just fundamentally in the pocketbook.
Yeah.
But, the car is the least rational of all of the decisions that you make in your life to do it. So, I don't try to buy new cars, although my wife just insisted. So we're going to get the new Volkswagen bus because we wanted a 7-seater.
It's very popular.
Our other car is a BYD Dolphin. We just let's get the cheapest one. And for every day getting around town, it's, it feels like Xi Jinping is riding on your shoulder because it's like, slow down, you're doing 62 kilometers per hour. Super annoying. And it's a great car with maybe the worst user interface in automotive history.
Yes.
But for just driving the kids to school and going to the grocery store,
fantastic.
It's fantastic. So and we paid nearly we're paying far more than double, nearly triple for the VW bus instead of the Dolphin.
Yes. Oh God, yeah. But yes, no, I'm with you on that. We've just been driving a thing called an Xpeng G6, and if you yawn when you're driving, it gives you a pinging warning. Everything goes red. It says driver drowsiness alert. But also, if you laugh, so if you have a European face and you laugh, it thinks you're falling asleep because I laugh with my mouth open. I go, ha ha ha.
You're a mouth laugher, as they would say.
I'm a mouth laugher, as opposed to a mouth breather. But it's pinging constantly all the time we're talking in the car. It's ping, 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 ping. Yeah, I mean, you can probably turn a lot of it off if you bother to do it.
Oh, once I find those wires, I'm going to publish it on the internet. I just don't clip the black one. It's definitely the red one with the green stripe, and then the voice goes away.
Yes. Get rid of the voice.
Yeah, I think the company that I'm worried that will emerge, and it could happen anywhere really, but can we just make a very simple car with wind-up windows and an electric motor and 3 buttons, in one of which is for the volume on the stereo?
Yeah. Yes. And I want a digital drivetrain with an analog interface. Absolutely nothing at all. Yeah. I mean, Volkswagen did do it with the e-up. I had an e-up for a couple of months, and that had nothing. It had a speedo, it had a little range indicator, it had a battery level. That was it. There was nothing else. You could tune into it with your phone and have your phone on a clip, and it would show stuff. But it was so good to drive that car. There was no clever stuff. Wind up windows with a handle.
Yeah. My real concern is that the car, I think we've got state capture, and sorry, this is going to sound a little rabbit hole paranoid, but I developed technology in Silicon Valley for 20 years, and the longest straw of every technology company we built was the regulatory hurdle.
Right, yeah.
Including now for cars. It's really all props to Tesla. Heroic to raise enough money to get through the regulatory requirements to put a car on American roads.
Yeah.
And we just made it compulsory in Australia to have these advanced driving systems. So any car without Xi Jinping looking to see whether you're yawning or farting is going to be illegal. But that really amounts to huge advantages to these incumbents.
Yeah.
And it's increasingly unlikely that we will ever get the E.J. Holden of electric vehicles.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Like, I think that time has gone, and every car is going to carry around $2,000 worth of electronics that I don't want.
Yeah, yeah. And I think when we're seeing the direct results of that, of the amazing startup companies we've been to see in Europe and in the United States that have already disappeared, there's just such a massive hurdle to get up to. I mean, I think Rivian might survive, and I think it's fantastic that they've got as far as they have, because everyone else, you see the fabulous prototype, and it's an amazing idea. Yeah.
I had the R1. I just sold mine. I had the launch edition.
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
Was it good? Did you like it, or it was a problem? Well, it was left-hand drive, I guess, wasn't it?
Yeah, I was going to bring it to Australia. It was left-hand drive, so we had it in the US. But I have a '59 Land Rover,
right?
Series 2. That thing will go for another century. It's unbelievable. The Rivian collected water in the sill where the wipers go, and then the whole power system failed. It was on and off for 9 months. It's I think the wiring harness probably weighs 100 kilograms. It's just, it's all, we're making all of these cars fragile by virtue of their complexity, and we're making them unnecessarily expensive, and then we're putting user interfaces on them that are unusable. You're driving down the highway and you've got to touch the touch screen and your fingers doing this thing.
Yeah.
Right? So, I don't know. The Rivian, I think, was well engineered and quite beautiful, but for my taste, 30% too big and 50% too complicated.
Yeah.
And what I really just want is, a Series 2 Land Rover with an electric motor in it. But like you said, I don't think startups can navigate to get there.
Yeah. You have mentioned this, but because I want to wind this up pretty soon, Saul, because I want you to go.
It's okay.
Go and have a birthday.
You can have the full hour. I have no idea where we're going in this interview, but maybe that's the point.
That is the point. It's very wobbly. The thing I would love to.
It's an interview salad made of question salads with a side of sort of answer antipasto.
Yeah. I wish I could disagree with you on that, but you're absolutely bloody spot on. That's exactly what it is, and it always is. But give me one more chance. So I mean, I
believe this is the modern podcast or broadcast format, though.
I think it is, isn't it?
If we could just make it 2.5 hours long, this would even be good on Joe Rogan.
Yeah. Yes.
But, in fact, I'm sure I've got a joint here somewhere. Give me.
But one thing that I'd love you to do your take on, because I just think your takes are always very refreshing, is the role of the fossil fuel industry.
We've got some problem now.
It's. Well, I mean, if you don't want to, I'm happy also to avoid it because it's also depressing. But I mean, I'll just give you one really good example. When we were in New Zealand, we stopped at a BP garage to try and use a BP rapid charger. It's all working. We couldn't download the app because we had a British phone with an Australian SIM, and you can't get the app, so we can't use it. It's like the most frustrating thing. And yet there's a petrol pump, and inside the shop there's a guy, and you pay the guy for the petrol. Why can't I pay? Why did they set that up like that is? What is going on in those worlds? I mean, it's just, I was chewing grit on the ground. I was so angry.
We can, yes. Maybe the best question was the one I criticised at the top of the show. Can you electrify everything?
Yeah.
Not with the user interfaces we're currently deploying.
Thank you. Yes. Thank you. Yeah.
Although in New Zealand you can actually, they have staffless petrol stations where you can just swipe the card.
Right. Yeah.
So that's pretty cool. But the charging infrastructure, we never figured out. We didn't standardize soon enough, so there was an arms race of who gets to build the proprietary standard, and that led us down some problems. And that's partly why it's taking so long to do vehicle to grid. It's because everyone's suing everyone at corporate level for who owns the IP. But none of it really matters because it's street level. Unless you own a garage and have your own solar, it's a fairly difficult experience.
Yeah.
It could be easy, but we are not committing the funds. We're going to do this with austerity and right-wing view of the world, which is individualized infrastructure as opposed to public infrastructure. So just when we need to be putting more money in this direction, I think the political winds are against it.
Yeah.
And, let's be very clear, there are fairly heavy-handed fingerprints of coal industry magnates and gas industry companies on propagating this disinformation and making it difficult to do this because they know it will give them another 30 years of $1 trillion a year profits.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting. I've had this conversation with 24 people since I've been in Australia about the push for nuclear in Australia, and no one has said it's a good idea. They've all said, well, it just means that the fossil fuel industry can make money for the next 30 years. And it's like, and this is across the board of generations, political outlook, everything. Everyone gets that. That's what that's about. I mean, I'm sure you're aware of Hinkley Point C, which is not where I live. I don't live that far from it in the UK. And it's just such a staggering cost that it's mounting up. It's gone over budget by, it's over £10 billion.
And Britain's only the second worst in the world in terms of price of nuclear energy. You're only 7 times the price of South Korea. America is 8 times the price.
Right. Okay. So
you could have had the conversation in Australia, should we do nuclear power? Maybe. Let's think about it for a second. Yeah. Oh, it's maybe more expensive than rooftop solar. So can we make it cheaper? And then you'd say, oh, look, here is how you make it cheaper. That's a regulatory problem and a policy problem.
Right.
But they didn't do that. They started having fever dreams about technologies that don't exist, like small modular reactors. Yeah. Small modular reactors are going to exist soon because we're going to redefine what it is to be an existing reactor design. Right. It's a marketing headline.
Right.
Anyway, we could have been honest and then tried to make it cheap, and then you would be like, oh, but even so, because of the cost of transmission and distribution, it's going to be more expensive than a lot of the alternatives here.
Yeah.
But we didn't have the conversation that way. We just allowed it to be an instant crazy culture war.
Right.
Which is sort of weird because the reason we aren't even allowed to think about developing nuclear was sort of a Greens party pushed on other legislation. It's like, this isn't even, I'm not quite sure why Labor clung so heavily to, no, we won't even countenance it. They could have probably made the problem go away just by saying, sure, we'll let you make it legal, but you're going to have a lot of headwinds making it economically work out.
Yeah.
Nuclear in Australia would kill itself without this help. What is, I find hilarious, and I don't know why this isn't been the party line. Why is it that our fiscally conservative party is arguing for socialist nuclear power, but, but capitalist everything else?
Yeah. Yes.
It's like your head explodes, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean and also the Hinkley Point C it's being built with Chinese money, and through a French company. So it's our great British nuclear future.
I mean, China's also been selling nuclear in Kenya, in UAE, all over the world.
Yeah.
Another thing, America missed just when it needed to be getting its nuclear industry ready to help the world decarbonize. It was preventing its nuclear industry from even retaining its muscle.
Yeah. Well, and what happened in Germany as well was pretty insane. Shutting down pre-built functioning nuclear power plants anyway, that's a whole other.
Yeah, we don't need a lot of nuclear, less than everyone thinks.
Yeah.
You don't have to be religiously anti-nuclear. You don't have to be religiously for it, but some people do that.
Yeah.
Australia is a place where you definitely don't need any of it.
No, you don't. You so don't here. No. Good God. Yeah. One of the arguments that I think you probably make through Rewiring Australia and everything else is about the air quality, because that is the argument that I get the most success with in terms of advocating for electrification of ground transport. That it's what we breathe in, it's particularly in cities. And we've actually seen a noticeable improvement in London in the last 5 years mainly because of electrification of buses, trucks and taxis rather than cars.
Yeah, I mean, Chinese cities 20 years ago, Chinese cities today, like you used to not be able to see your feet.
Yeah.
Now you can see the horizon.
Yeah.
I don't know. My car collection includes 59 Land Rover and a 66 Holden, and I just bought a 1967 Vespa two-stroke scooter. And so, for the first few months that I own all of these things, they run on whatever they ran on.
Yeah.
Because I live an otherwise electric life, it's just so pungently noticeable that these things are
Yes.
awful.
Yeah.
And then I'm a few weeks away from the Vespa with with a sidecar being electrified, and that'll be a hoot, and no longer rattle, and no longer smell like brain cancer every time you've started up.
Yeah.
So I don't love that we have to go to air quality as the reason to do this. I think there's economic reasons, there's community economic development reasons. I think that's an interesting point. Maybe we can talk about that. And there are obviously the climate reasons, and I think these are way more compelling. But let's use all the good arguments. Also, children won't have asthma. Also, you won't have a sore throat so often. Also, your eyes won't sting when you're standing next to a petrol car.
Busy road. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, the other one that's just come out, which I think, I mean, you're a good bit younger than me, so you missed the worst of it. But I grew up in a leaded petrol environment, and the latest research on the impact of leaded petrol, it might even explain the support for. No, I'm not going to say anything, but it certainly affects psychology. There's huge amounts of data now showing that it affects the psychological makeup and your brain function. And I mean, that was all the petrol was leaded when I was a kid. I grew up in that world.
Yeah, I still have the taste in my mouth. I used to have to siphon during the oil crisis. I'd help my dad siphon petrol from a jerry can into his vintage Jaguar that never worked properly. So I was weaned straight from the breast to the petrol siphon.
Yeah, me too.
Leaded.
Fully leaded. Yeah.
Cleans your teeth, though.
Oh, it's wonderful. We've all got perfect teeth as a result of that. There was something you said just then. I've now had a brain fart and not remember what it was that sparked another slice of mixed salad.
Oh, community economic renewal.
Thank you very much, Saul. Good grief. Yes, because I think that to me is, I've just been to a place out north of Sydney where there's a community battery and lots of solar, and when you see that in action, I've heard the theory, but you see it there. That's the people in those houses that have loads of solar during the day, but not at night. They do have it at night because they've got one battery, not 300 individual batteries. One battery they've all chipped in for.
We're doing a project with the RENA, which is the Australian Renewable Energy Agency. It's really what should be happening globally. We're very rapidly electrifying a large portion of our community. Our community is interesting because really when we talk about sectors and all of these other abstract things in the energy system, it's really not the right way to think about what's happening. Electricity couples all the sectors. Yeah. Those sectors were decided by what was easy to measure economically when the Energy Information Administration was founded in 1976. It's now irrelevant. What you really care about is the local distribution grid. Yeah. So that's the machine behind the railway station that's got all the wires coming out of it that feeds electricity to around about 4 or 5,000 households. And that's where all the action is, because we can do a huge amount of solar under that substation to generate, and that'll be if we change the rules of the system, the regulations, then I would be allowed to sell my solar very cheaply to my neighbor for 5 or 6 cents a kilowatt hour. Right. Right now we have this bullshit pretense that when I sell it back to the retailer or the energy company, that they send it back to Melbourne and then they can charge it to me later for 32 cents a kilowatt hour. Yeah. But that's artificial, but it's really just because we wrote these rules for the grid around what fossil could do, not around what the future can do. Anyway, so we're trying to make it all electrify much faster, deploy community batteries. But I think this is the story I really wanted to say. Like, our community are pretty typical average Australian suburbs. So 6 suburbs, 1 postcode, 1 substation, 4,000 households. We spend somewhere between $25 and $30 million a year buying fossil fuels. Wow. That money leaves the community on a one-way ticket. Yeah. Because We don't make oil here. We don't make gas here. Yes, we do make coal here, but it's metallurgical coal that we export. We don't burn it for power. And if you think about it, if we could produce all of the energy for all of the residences in our suburbs off rooftop solar and batteries nearly year round. We'd be a little bit short in July and August, but we could get that from a local wind farm.
Yeah.
So we could probably keep $20 million in our community a year of that 25 to 30.
Yeah.
And we know that in Australia, and it's typical in most Western countries, about 50 to 60% of household spending is spent in your local area.
Yeah.
So we'd be spending an extra $12 or $15 million a year in our local area.
Yeah.
And if you think about what that happens, that's a whole bunch of cafes, it's a whole bunch of restaurants, you gold plate the church, you get a new boat for the surf club, you put a new teacher in every classroom.
Yeah.
This could and should be the economic success story. If the Democrats in America wanted to fight back, they'd say, actually, we know how to deliver cost of living relief and deflation to American households. We know how to renew the communities of Appalachia. It's through electrification, local generation, this thing. And then you'll stop sending all your money to Texas to completely pollute US politics.
Yes.
So, this is the story now.
Yeah.
The progressive left globally has missed the boat. I'm kind of hoping that some centrist parties reinvigorate the politics everywhere and are just on the sensible story of we know how to improve your health, save the children, save the whales, make your community gold plated and put more money in your pocket.
Yeah. Because, I've always been touting the figures. So nationally, the UK, it's about £1.4 billion a week that leaves our economy to pay for fossil fuels, which has a benefit to our total economy. There's no arguing that. But to do it on a much smaller level, like you've just done there, when you tell people who live around you, this is how much money is leaving our local economy. It's a hell of a lot that's a big chunk of cash
I'm putting in a 20 kilowatt solar system on a roof. I will start saving $6,000 a year.
Yeah. Yeah.
$6,000 a year. And,
which you'll spend elsewhere as well. You'll spend it in a different way. That's the thing.
I'll spend it electrifying vintage cars and drinking, frothy lattes.
Yeah.
And beer, of course, which is, probably local.
Really do hope you enjoyed that. Please do tell your mates about the people we get on this show. That is a real coup to have Saul on this show. So thrilled to talk to him. Please do subscribe if you haven't. And as always, if you have been, thank you for watching and listening.